What is good, YouTube? Katana here, and today it's gonna be a tier list video, kind of, sort of. I will explain it a little bit, and also just talking about 1vx, 1v1, group play, and zerging. Now, for the tier list, because that's probably what most people came in for, I'm gonna be brutally honest. The way the meta of this game right now, I would have to say that it's more sets that are OP more than the classes. There, give or take, a few classes have better toolkits than others in certain scenarios, especially with certain setups on, and have some abilities that I feel like they should have worked on a long time ago, but still haven't. For example, Magsork with the overload desync. If they were to fix that on Magsork, it'd probably just be it would probably still be S, but it's just wouldn't be as brutal as people do say it is. Anyways, into the tier list itself, I would say there's no particular order except for the very first one, and I'll say why. I'm not gonna go too much in depth for every single class or anything like that, but I'll explain just a little bit on why, what is what. If you're new on my channel and you don't know how my tier lists work, typically it is not just only me that makes it. It's me gathering information from a bunch of people and just putting it all together and coming out with a letter grade that is based on not only carries and non-carries, but what it is, if it's effective in 1v1s, group play, 1vx, no CP, BGs, and all that. So the very first class is Werewolf. And yes, it is ranked number 1 and it is S. And really it's because it's an ultimate. It's an ultimate, and it's a quote unquote class, I would like to say. The way Werewolf works is that you can play literally any class and you throw Werewolf on it and you throw a Werewolf build on it, a quote unquote Werewolf build. And you turn into a werewolf and the whole thing changes. Like, you have your own bar, you don't swap bars, and your whole character sheet looks completely different, and you can pretty much stay as a werewolf infinitely. Now, this is something that ZOS doesn't tell newer players typically, but it's basically its own class. I'm gonna be honest, it's basically its own class. So yes, that is number 1, and it's the only one that actually has a legitimate spot. Everything else is in no particular order, but is ranked. So for the rest of the classes, we have Magsork S, Stamcrow S, Stamden S, Stamdk S, Stamblade A+, Magdk A+, Magcrow A, Magden A, Magplar A, Stamsork A, Stamplar A, Magniteblade B+. Now the ones in S just have really good survivability, and especially if you throw in the carries and for the known metas and things like that, they're just pretty OP. I'm not gonna lie. We got a dot decay that you do a PvE rotation, you could 2-tap someone. You got a Magsork with the whole overload desync, you throw on a few procs, boom, you're gonna 2-tap someone even more. You got a Stamcrow that has the best defensive utility kit, and it got a little nerf, but it's nothing too drastic. Blastbone still hits decent, so it's still pretty good. And then we have Stamden, where you could have 40k health and still hit moderate to above moderate damage. Now for the A pluses, they just lack a little bit of something that makes them below S, but they're not terrible. Like, Stamblade just has a little bit less survivability than most classes, but that's about it. It hits probably the hardest out of all the classes. And yeah, MagDK, it's just honestly because of the metas and the procs and things like that it's even where it's at. Like, some people could even debate that Magden is along in the A plus category, but it is what it is. Macro, Magden, Magplar, Stamsork, Stamplar, all of them are missing very little things, just like in the A plus, but just a little bit less than A plus. So for example, the Plars have a little bit less healing, just like Stamblade, right? But the thing is, their healing isn't completely trash. I'm not saying that, but the thing is that they also had their damage reduced, so they could hit hard, but they don't typically hit as hard as, like, for example, a stand blade could hit 100% harder than a Stamplar. Like you use in-cap will, you could pretty much kill somebody. But that's just an example. And like a Magro, for example, the only reason why it's where it's at is because in a 1vx scenario, it for finishing off opponents, it's very difficult. Like you just, for whatever it's silly. For whatever reason, you just can't finish off your opponent sometimes. If they're roll dodging, if they could just out heal your burst and things like that. And now the one Magblade B+, the reason why it's ranked where it is it has great damage, but after this patch had major and minor buff changes, so a lot of things got reworked, and they're tanky still, and they still have good heals, but they're just not like before. And then on top of that, their burst is so easily dodgeable. So for example, a Magsork has frags, right? That's like their one of their hard hitting abilities, frags. But frags can proc very often, whereas for Magblade, when they have to build up a bow, they have to light attack 5 times before they can build up a bow. Where if the person dodge rolls the bow, they have to wait a whole nother 5 light attacks. Now in a 1vx scenario, sometimes that could be a pain in the butt, sometimes it's not. And I'm not saying you don't get your bow often. Obviously, if you're light attack weaving, you get it pretty often. But it's the fact that it's so it's dodged so much, and most people don't typically understand what I'm talking about unless you've actually played a Magblade in an open world scenario. Now, in a one-on-one scenario, it's great, it's terrific, especially if you throw on carries. No matter what, for all these classes, if you throw on carries on them, they'll most likely perform well. It's just some classes either lack a little bit of survivability or it lacks a little bit of mobility, which is why the S classes are where they're at, where you could really efficiently use, survivability, damage. You could get like pretty much everything on those S classes, and everything ranked below it, it's just missing just a little bit of something. Even with carries on, just a little bit of something that it don't hit the same, if you know what I mean. It don't hit the same as the S tier classes. Now Werewolf, I might as well have just put it S+, but it is what it is. Now that's the tier list for this patch, because the patch is just, health recoveries, procs, and werewolves. So I don't think it's so much as the class as it is for build setups and things like that. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about 1vx, group play, zerging, and 1v1s. Now a lot of people frown upon people zerging. Now I genuinely don't see a problem with that. Like people that 1vx because of people zerging, and people that do group play because of people zerging, you have clips. You get AP because of the people zerging you down. And it's crazy because I'm even talking about this because I've seen so many people even saying like death threats for getting zerged down by a bunch of zerglings and things like that. It's like, come on. First of all, we're playing a game. We're playing Elder Scrolls Online. It's not that deep. Second off, it's like you wanted the situation. Like you wanted the situation. Unless you have like some sort of weird big ego talking about like, oh, I've never zerged in my life, which is probably cap anyways, but I've never zerged in my life. You'll never catch me zerging, la 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 la. I don't see even a reason why to even talk about the subject. But I'm going to be honest. I've done all of the things I've listed. I've zerged, I've group played, I've 1vx'd on pretty much every class, and I duel. And only reason I duel is for money. I 1vx because it's just satisfying. Like you kill a bunch of people. I know I go out there I'm going out there with the intention of like, oh, I'm going to beat some people's booty cheeks, but there's a high probability I'm going to get my cheeks clapped. And then for group play, it's somewhat similar situation. And zerging, it's only if it's necessary. So, for example, what I mean if it's necessary is like, if you don't know and you're new to my channel, as you can see even in this clip, like I play with people that have pretty much the same first beginning of their PSN as me, Reckless, and most of the time, I'm not saying I only play with them, but most of the time I do. And we've all gotten amp at least once, except one person, but that's a whole different discussion and a whole different reason why. But we've all gotten amp, and there's been times where I've even helped other people get amp that aren't reckless, obviously. And there's been times where I've had to lead a Zerg, not only because nobody wanted to lead the Zerg, but because we had to flip the map. Now I'm gonna be brutally honest. Did I like leading the Zerg? No, because purely for the fact that they didn't know what they were doing. they couldn't stay alive. The only benefit I saw from it was the fact that they what's it called? They sieged. Now, I would not frown upon it, and if you do Zerg, it's cool and dandy. Just don't have some weird ego, because you're not doing anything tremendously impressive. Now, people that do group play, I'm gonna be honest, we never used group play builds before. Like, never legitimate group play builds that like synchronize with each other, and we just did it the other day. I kid you not, we felt like we were cheating. We were taking on the amp group, a bunch of siege, and just killing a bunch of people, even good players within the Zerg. It was crazy. It was just crazy. I was like, this is broken. This is easy. So I highly recommend, if you've never done that with your friends and things like that, do group play builds that synergize well with each other. Now, for 1vxers and duelers, for whatever reason, both sides have weird egos and weird biases about each other. I don't know why, but they do. Duelers typically think 1vxers are just all booty, which I cannot agree. I don't agree. I do not agree at all. And then it could go vice versa. And so typically, I know a lot of duelers that can't, they get a 1v3, or they quote unquote X in a B. I'm not saying it's impossible to X in a BG, but a BGX is not, in my opinion, I'm not impressed with BGXs, which is why I never post any of mine. Like, it's just, I don't even clip them. Like, you could, if you see me stream and stuff like that, you can see me get them and stuff, but I never even clip them because it's not impressive. In a non-CP and in a BG situation, high damage and procs are so OP that you can pretty much, it's almost easier than CP in a situation, because, you know, it's less survivability, less tankiness, less heals. So I never clip them. So most of the time, people that duel, I know quite a few people that can't even X, and they be clipping like 1v3s and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's just not even X. And then you could go to the people that 1vx, they can't duel because, well, they're facing people that aren't as good all the time. So what I mean by that is, like, if you've ever dueled before, especially really good players, is that it's almost like a game of chess. Like, people bait you into pushing them so then they may kill you. So for example, like, I could be heavy attacking, or I purposely let my health get low so I then can just kill you. And that doesn't happen when you're 1vxing, because the Zerglings aren't thinking, let me jabait you. They're thinking, let me ult dump your hairline off so I may kill you. That's it. But it does take skill to 1vx to a degree, because, you know, sometimes you get really AIDS things. And I mean, I'm going to be brutally honest. The chances of someone Xing really good players is very low. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's very low. Like, most of the time, good players don't get X'd on. It's just, that's a fact. And it's not impossible, but it's just not typical. And I'm gonna say it now. It takes skill to 1vx, because you have to line of sight and you have to pick and choose your battles, and you have to accept the fact that you die. And a lot of duelers can't accept that, so that's the reason they can't 1vx. But I just wanted to say those few things, just, you know, put it out there. Comment down below your thoughts on the topics at hand, why people have biases on each other, and why to me it's silly, and why people hate each other so much over such the smallest things. There's not a single person in this game that I hate, and there's barely, I wouldn't even say I dislike anyone even super strongly. I don't really care about anybody except my homies and my acquaintances. Simple as that. But again, comment down below your thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys are going to have a good year. Like, comment, and if you are new to my channel, so